Right now, every living cell in your body is running a relentless biological engine. To keep functioning, they are constantly extracting oxygen and nutrients from their environment, while simultaneously pumping out toxic waste products like carbon dioxide. There is no pause button on this process. If the delivery of fresh supplies, or the removal of that waste, halts for even a few minutes, those cells begin to die. To prevent that collapse, the body relies on a specialized transport vehicle, the erythrocyte, or red blood cell. It has a unique biconcave shape and actually lacks a nucleus, freeing up internal space to pack in as much of a complex iron-rich protein called hemoglobin as possible. That missing nucleus means the red blood cell can't divide or repair itself. Its entire 120-day lifespan is dedicated to a single purpose, acting as a tireless courier, shuttling molecules back and forth to keep your cellular economy running. These red couriers don't travel alone. They flow through a fluid matrix called plasma, sharing the road with white blood cells that hunt down foreign infections and platelets ready to trigger emergency coagulation if a vessel is breached. To manage all this traffic, humans rely on a closed infrastructure known as double circulation. Instead of one massive circuit, the transit network is split into two distinct, interconnected pathways. This schematic outlines the first route, the pulmonary circulation. Its job is strictly restorative. It takes the deoxygenated, waste-filled blood from the heart and carries it directly to the lungs, swapping carbon dioxide for a fresh payload of oxygen. Once the blood is recharged, it drops into the second route, the systemic circulation. This much larger network pushes the oxygen-rich blood out to every tissue in the body, drops off the essential nutrients, collects the waste, and channels everything back to the center. Moving a thick, viscous fluid through two separate loops of microscopic capillaries requires an immense amount of physical pressure. It requires a central mechanical engine capable of perfectly timed, continuous force. That engine is the heart, a muscular organ roughly the size of a clenched fist, divided into 4 chambers. Our deoxygenated red blood cell arrives here, pooling into the small upper right chamber called the right atrium. The mechanical squeeze of the heart is triggered by an electrical spark, a specialized patch of tissue in the upper corner. The sinoatrial node, or pacemaker, fires an action potential that spreads across the muscle. This electrical wave causes both upper atria to contract simultaneously. This pushes our red blood cell through a one-way opening into the larger, lower chamber, the right ventricle. As the pressure in that lower chamber rises, the flaps of the tricuspid valves snap shut to block the blood from flowing backward. That physical snapping of the valve is what creates the first heavy lub sound you hear through a stethoscope. The electrical signal reaches the bottom of the heart, causing the thick walls of the right ventricle to violently contract. Our red blood cell is blasted upward, forcing open the pulmonary valve and shooting out into the artery toward the lungs. That entire sequence represents the sole purpose of the heart's right side, receiving the body's exhaust and aggressively pumping it to the lungs for a reset. Now carrying fresh oxygen, the cell returns from the lungs and drops into the left atrium. Another contraction pushes it down into the left ventricle, the most muscular, thick-walled chamber of the entire heart. A second set of valves snap shut behind it, creating the higher-pitched dub sound. Then, the left ventricle delivers a massive, high-pressure contraction, rocketing the oxygenated cell up into the aorta to begin its journey through the body. Because this mechanical pumping is dictated entirely by electrical misfires, doctors can track the heart's efficiency without ever looking at the organ itself. Instead, they use an electrocardiogram, or ECG. This standard ECG trace maps those invisible signals. The small P wave shows the upper atria firing. The massive, sharp spike of the QRS complex represents the electrical wave hitting the thick lower ventricles to trigger their heavy contraction. Finally, the T wave records the ventricles resetting back to a normal state. That single line from P to T represents one complete heartbeat. From the initial spark of the pacemaker, to the atrial squeeze, to the violent blast of the ventricles, to the final relaxation. All of it happens in exactly 0.8 seconds. By simply counting the peaks and measuring the spaces on this graph, doctors have a real-time diagnostic window into exactly how well the biological engine is running. At rest, your heart executes that 0.8-second cycle roughly 72 times every single minute. It is continuously maintaining a cardiac output of about 5 liters of blood, ensuring no tissue is ever starved. Unlike your skeletal muscles, the heart is myogenic. That means the cardiac tissue generates its own rhythm. It does not wait for a command from your brain to decide when to beat. The pacemaker fires automatically. But your brain can override the system. If you start sprinting, sympathetic neural signals from your autonomic nervous system hit the gas pedal, accelerating the pacemaker and strengthening the ventricular squeeze. When you sit down, parasympathetic signals act as the brakes, slowing the firing rate back to normal. The heart is a completely autonomous engine, while the brain sits in the background, operating the cruise control, constantly reading the physical environment and dialing the output up or down to match. Because the tissues of the body are completely reliant on this delivery system, any mechanical friction in the pipes or damage to the pump creates cascading biological failures. In coronary artery disease, deposits of calcium, fat, and cholesterol begin to coat the inside of the blood vessels. This narrows the tunnels, starving the heart muscle itself of oxygen and triggering acute, severe chest pain known as angina. If the resting pressure inside those vessels consistently reads higher than 140/90, the system is in a state of hypertension. That excessive, constant mechanical stress forces the pump to work harder, eventually causing direct physical damage to vital organs like the brain and kidneys. The human circulatory system relies on a perfect balance of fluid dynamics, electrical precision, and muscular endurance. Keeping those vascular highways clear and flexible is the only way to protect the engine and sustain that 0.8-second rhythm.